Hey, Zern listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, The Last Resort. Actually, I just realized they call it 90 Day. They leave out the fiancé part. I wonder if that's their new brand, 90 Day. Anyway, let's watch.
You're saying that Asuelo cheated the entire relationship. So then, Kalani, what's the reason that you didn't want that information out there? I mean, that's a lot to carry.
Right. So by the time I had figured things out, I was pregnant. And I was already bringing him to America, so I just felt like I needed to suck it up and just hide it. I wanted him to get along with my dad.
Wait, did we know this already? Maybe I did, and I forgot, but it's possible that we didn't know that much detail, that he's been cheating throughout their relationship. Even before he came to the States, he was cheating on her, but she was already pregnant, so she's saying that she had to sweep it under the rug. The way that the three of them are talking about his infidelity, it sounds like he's cheated dozens of times in the span of what, like 4 or 5 years that they've been together, which is incredible, really. And something's going on there. Either he's a psychopath or he has something going on with him. I mean, it's so, I guess it could be his family might have modeled, his dad might have modeled this for him. We never met his dad, right? It's been so many years and so many seasons, I'm forgetting all the details, but so it's possible that, well, anyway, there's a lot of different roads, but the pain, and Kalani was talking about how she was always there for her sister, to support her sister, and how all three of them would have to hide this information from their family, from their parents, because they probably knew that their parents would hate Asuelu because of this. They also hid it from us, right? They didn't, but I guess to hide it from their parents, they'd have to hide it from us. So I guess those days are over. Now they're telling us, which is, I don't know, what's going on with Asuelu. I mean, the infidelity moments that we saw are notable. It's not like one or two infidelity moments is somehow like, well, it's no big deal. It's all a big deal. There's something going on. There's always something going on there, but there's particularly something going on there if you're repeatedly doing it, right? So the psychopath hypothesis, which I don't imagine is accurate, but there'd be no way for me to know, because psychopaths and antisocial people are good at coming across like they have compassion and that they are on the up and up. But anyway, it's not likely. It's statistically not likely, but that option is you, either due to the way you were born or the way you developed, you lack empathy and you don't regard other people's feelings. You don't feel remorse. You don't really care about other people. You might not even notice the possibility of harming other people with your actions. Not that you necessarily seek out harming others. That's more sadistic personality. Psychopaths often will be sadistic, but they're not always. Antisocial people aren't always out to get other people. Sometimes they just lack empathy and they will either accidentally hurt other people because they don't intuit how they're going to harm others, or if you get in their way, then they will do what they can to push you aside or step on you. If you and an antisocial person and their coworker are up for a promotion, and the antisocial person is like, oh, well, I gotta compete with my coworker, so they might lie just straight up to the boss or spread rumors without any remorse and without even giving it a second thought because you're in their way. But if you're not in their way, then they wouldn't do that to you, right? Whereas sadistic folks wake up in the morning and actually, generally speaking, depending on the severity, actually they want either sexually or just their own desire in life, like how someone might want to go on a walk. Sadistic people want to harm others. They want to see other people being harmed, either vicariously, someone harming another person, or they are doing the one that's doing the harming. Anyway, my point is that for Asuelu, that's one option, that he lacks empathy and doesn't care. And when he would get caught, he would not have remorse. He would act like he had remorse, and then he would maybe even kind of mean it that he wasn't going to do it again because it was inconveniencing his life, which is often the antisocial person's reason for complying with this. They're not, for the rest of us, we will comply or agree to accommodate or sacrifice for people in our life because we actually care and we don't want to hurt their feelings, even if we don't get anything out of it. Like there are plenty of things in my life with my wife that I sacrifice or dedicate myself to, not because I have, at the very least, any sort of noticeable reciprocity, or that sounds funny because there's a lot of reciprocation in our relationship, but it's not like I think that way. I'm not thinking, well, the only reason why I'm not cheating on Stacy is because she's not cheating on me. That's not how typically it works, right? Because we seemingly evolved to have compassion and a desire for that loyalty, or that giving, that altruism, that compassion, that care for other people's feelings. Anyway, so for him, he might have wanted to comply, kind of, but then as soon as another opportunity came around, he was going for it and didn't even give it a second thought. And then he gets caught, because you would just imagine, the reason why I say something significant is going wrong there is I think he would tell that he cheated, right? So then another hypothesis, and I've probably given this a lot of time on this channel, talking about my running hypothesis that I would pursue if someone like Asuelu were to come into my office, that he suffers from some sort of dependency, some sort of trauma that led to him maybe not developing or maturing or something, or holding on to something, or holding on to childhood, or never been given a chance to fully realize his responsibility. Like maybe he was parented in a way, either in his family or culturally, that boys don't have to rise to the occasion. They don't have to, one of the things that you want to do when you're parenting kids is you want to give them age-appropriate responsibilities, because that's when they start to internalize their sense of responsibility. People don't just naturally develop responsibility or a sense of their own responsibility, a sense of how their actions will impact other people. Like, for example, with I'll just say for myself that I give this example sometimes, that it's a small, sort of silly example, but I remember it very well, that when I was around 16 years old, my parents sat me down and they said, we're not going to buy your toiletries anymore, your shampoo and all that kind of stuff. And that was a big deal, because even though 16, it's not strange for someone that age to buy that kind of stuff. There was nothing in my life that was even close to that. My parents gave me everything. I never had to think about that sort of thing. And to think about it, I thought, wow, I didn't feel it was unfair. It was a little bit of a bummer because I didn't earn that much in my part-time job, but I did it. And when I did it over time, I started to take responsibility. I started to take ownership over, well, what kind of shampoo do I use? Do I pick an economical choice? Is there value there? Maybe I conserve the shampoo so that I don't burn through it faster because it costs money. So if my parents hadn't done that to me and they started to observe that I was being a little entitled about shampoo and maybe using too much of it or something, and they just said to me, you need to be responsible with your shampoo, it wouldn't be a bad statement, but real life will teach things much faster than a parent just telling you something. So my point is that it's possible that for Asuelu, he wasn't given those responsibilities and he was protected from that. Like, I don't know, but there's a chance that he was the golden boy in this family. And some people from this part of the world where Asuelu's from will attest to the coddling of boys. I don't know if it's always true, but people have told me that, and I've had clients from Samoa who will say similar things. But I don't know. I'm sure there's a bell curve. I'm sure there's a lot of variability, but it's possible that throughout his life he was the golden boy, the special boy, because of sexism in families, and that he was never given responsibility, that when he did harm other people in the family, especially if it was a sister, and the sister were to say, hey, Asuelu did that thing to me, because Asuelu is a special boy, everyone says, makes excuses for Asuelu. And so because of that, then Asuelu is never given an opportunity to reckon with how he affects other people. And he still has a childish understanding of the world, not that he makes choices that, you can either choose the adult choice or the child choice. He literally just doesn't understand cognitively that his actions harm other people. Well, he understands, children understand these things intellectually, but they don't really understand, you know what I mean? Like with children, they intellectually understand that if they don't do their chores, then that is unfair. They sort of intellectually understand that. They understand that when they don't do their chores, it bothers their parents. When you get older, you understand that in the grand scheme of things, if no one does their chores or if one person doesn't contribute, then everyone else suffers because they have to either deal with the fact that that chore isn't done or they have to do it themselves. And they're struggling with their time management and their stress level and all those kinds of things. Whereas when you're 7 and you're asked to vacuum the living room, you don't have that understanding because you've never been in those shoes and you've never had that modeled to you before. You've never had that experience and you've never been let in on what's going on. And that's a good thing because you don't want 7-year-olds to worry about that sort of thing. But age appropriate, eventually you want to have experiences that really teach you, not only just intellectually, like I understand that this bothers people, but I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. Not that he would have to go through some sort of cheating experience, but I think it's more fundamental that could be something around his responsibility, that he might have been in a family environment where it was literally just never, he was never given a chance to experience the effects of, like, it's, like with the example of, well, with chores, let's say that in his family, everyone had chores, but if he didn't do the chore, then he wasn't punished or disciplined or highlighted, whereas the daughters in the family would be. I'm just making up stories. I have no idea. But, the daughters, when they didn't do a chore, they would experience normal or even a severe discipline or something. And for Asuelu, even though he understands that he's being spoiled, he might even understand that intellectually, but it's not in his bones. He doesn't really feel it. Whereas, for example, let's say that one of his sisters doesn't do the dishes, and then it's his job to make dinner and set the table. That's his job that day. And he can't do it now because the sister didn't do the dishes. And when he experiences that, then he experiences, and with repetition, he experiences, when other people don't do chores, it actually is very frustrating. And so when I don't do the chores, then I will feel that feeling for other people. I don't just intellectually understand that it's inconveniencing to other people, but I actually know what it's like to be in those shoes. And it's possible that he just didn't have an environment like that. That's another hypothesis. Another is that it's more generally just dependency, that he was a parent, that he was traumatized in a way that made him feel incompetent, such that he doesn't feel like an adult. He doesn't feel like he has the power of an adult. He doesn't feel like he knows things the way adults do. And he kind of operates that way to some extent. And when you have that, you will have potentially arrested development where you actually never feel like you, even though intellectually you understand that you are a peer, you're equal to your partner, you absolutely never feel that way. And I've treated people like this before, and it's weird. You can have a 45-year-old woman who has a job and she seems very competent, but with her husband, even if her husband is younger than her, she has no felt sense that they are equals, or even that she's older. She will feel like, essentially like she is her husband's daughter, and that she could, and all the things that come with it. She would feel that she couldn't hurt his feelings the way that a 7-year-old doesn't usually think about how they could devastate their parents with an insult. We don't want 7-year-olds to worry about that sort of thing. I mean, within reason, of course, but as children are developing, they have yet to learn how much effect they have on people, and we just don't want to burden them with that quite yet. It's sort of like if your 7-year-old kid wanted to do dance class and there was some sort of fee, and your family was going through a tough time, and you really want your 7-year-old to go through this dance class. It's very important to your 7-year-old, and yet money is tight, and you say, it's hard for us to afford that. And there's a lot of evidence, if your 7-year-old was older, they would notice that there's a lot of evidence of financial distress, but 7-year-olds should be protected from that kind of thing typically. And so for you, as the parent, you're like, I think we're going to have to, or maybe for you, it's like you would have to cut back on your class. Like maybe you have a dance class and you cancel it, and you actually will not tell the 7-year-old that, your 7-year-old says, I thought you were in dance. You'd be like, oh, well, I thought I'd take a year off from it, even though really you actually decided to cancel it because you save money to pay for the 7-year-old. You don't tell the 7-year-old, oh, well, I canceled my dance class because you, want dance more, and since you're the kid, you get to go to dance and I don't. Like, you don't tell that to the kid because they can't really process that information, So, I mean, depending, parenting is weird. So it's possible that he never went through those, so the developmental process such that he would eventually get to that point where he would just naturally feel like an adult and thus operate like an adult. Anyway, but to hear that he's been cheating potentially dozens of times with dozens of people since before that he even came to the States, it's astonishing. Something's going on there. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So, make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
And with my family members, so I just kept it hidden, basically to protect him.
I feel really sick to talk about what I did. I just feel like ass. I feel like I don't deserve to be here.
Yeah, and we've seen this before, and I've commented on it before, that his reactivity is potentially confusing to others in that he comes across like he has genuine remorse and sadness, which you want to see in a situation like that. Anyone who cheats in the way that he has, you would really hope that they would have this reaction multiple times as they are being talked with about it or as they remember it. So when we see this, I think maybe a lot of people would think that's just an act, and it could be, but it's not likely. It's possible. I don't know. There's just I've treated a lot of people who have problems with infidelity. And I've also treated a lot of victims of infidelity where we're trying to hypothesize as to why the partner would have cheated. And I've, helped a lot of couples. Like when I treat couples as they recover from infidelity, a big part of my treatment model is figuring out why the fuck the cheating happened in the first place. What is going on with that person's personality? Like something's going on there. The way that it's painted in the public discourse is it's having your cake and eat it too. That's not, in my experience, that's never been the case. It's never just been someone just being like, I wonder if I can get away with it, or some sort of just simplistic immaturity or lack of empathy or something. It's always something's going on, some sort of passive aggression, trauma based, trauma happens and then some adaptation to the trauma is developed neurologically over time, and a lot of defenses and a lot of justifications and a lot of distortions. And then that is carried on into the future, even though the trauma is over, and that will cause impulses and justifications and compulsions and distortions and entitlement and justifications and denials, lots of different things. So it just makes me wonder what's going on. Of course, there are other factors, toxic masculinity, modeling from his dad, what was going on there, general sexism in a society, treating women like, well, I can cheat, but you can't. There's factors that we can point to, but and certainly things that should be addressed. But I don't know. I feel like I'm guessing that there's something going on with him. So the hypotheses that I provided are still in that category. I'm just trying to think if anything else occurs to me based on what we've seen. Well, passive aggression. So I hadn't talked about that today, in that when people are abused or terrorized sufficiently and chronically in their early life, and they are particularly traumatized or prevented from expressing their anger or displeasure, they will table their anger and their displeasure and their assertiveness and suppress it, but it doesn't go away. And so they need some way of letting it out. And in lieu of any sort of semblance of a healthy way of getting it out, like if you had a 5-year-old who was being mistreated, a 5-year-old who felt unfairly treated by their parents, and let's say the parents are a little stern, but they're not optimal in terms of openness to child emotion and complaints, but they're not super abusive. And the 5-year-old will come home from school and be told by the parents, you have to clean your room, and the kid goes into the room and doesn't clean the room, and then the parents come in and say, hey, you're supposed to clean your room. We're gonna make you clean your room. And then the kid is just like, you're always telling me what to do, and has this meltdown. And because these parents aren't super terrible, they notice that and wonder if that is an expression of some sort of displeasure or anger or suffering, and they adjust kind of. So in that situation, it's not optimal. We're not talking about a good situation for the child, but at least there's some way for the child to communicate their anger, which is, for a lot of dysfunctional families, they do have that. Whereas if it's extremely rigid in the way in which a child is being systematically beaten down, sometimes particularly regarding anger, then there's no possibility of expressing anger, so they have to let it out somehow, and they will let it out in passive ways, even to them. Passive meaning hidden. Passive aggression, the phrase to use is hidden hostility. So it's hostility that is hidden, sometimes even to the expressor. And so infidelity is a very common thing that people will do, because when they leave the home and they enter into a significant attachment with a spouse, there's a lot of opportunity for feeling hurt and thus anger and displeasure and tension in a relationship. And anger is a very, very important, even though the public discourse around this is the opposite, anger is very important and healthy in a marriage. But how do you express it? That's the key, right? You don't hit or yell or scream, but you feel hurt, and then you feel the anger, and then it motivates you. Anger is a motivator, okay? And but what do you do with that motivation, okay? Like if in my marriage I have my feelings hurt and I feel anger and I notice the anger, like I have sort of angry sentences going in my mind, and I'm differentiated enough, then I say, oh, okay, I feel energy, I feel tension, like I want to do something about it. You could argue that's anger. And then I will go to my wife and say, hey, you hurt my feelings. Okay, so I'm being assertive, and maybe there's a bit of quote unquote anger or frustration or sort of energy. And so that's my little bit about anger right there. But for passive aggressive hidden hostility folks, they can't, even though it's very possible, I'm guessing, for him to express his anger towards his wife, he, because of the trauma, just assumes that that's off the table. And so infidelity will be a way, like she hurts his feelings somehow, which we see sometimes, and then he would stuff it, not even acknowledge it to himself, and then he finds himself out with his friends, and he sees a woman, and he consciously is very motivated to get with her, but 99% of his ego is actually just doing this as a way of giving a middle finger to his wife, because he feels that he can't. And it's not even really a middle finger to his wife. It would be a middle finger to his parents, who were the originators of the trauma to begin with. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.